If someone had told me the safest place in this city for both of them would end up being my empty cafe, I wouldn't have believed it. Autumn wind rattled the windows of Maple Street Café as Emily Carter wiped down the final table, her hands moving on muscle memory after 15 years of the same clothes. Millbrook, Vermont had slipped into its evening hush. The only sound the distant thrum of cars along Route 4. Warm amber light pooled across the scuffed wooden floors. And the lingering scent of freshly ground coffee mingled with a faint ribbon of cinnamon from the day's last muffins. Emily glanced at the clock over the espresso machine, 9:47 p.m. 13 minutes past closing, but she never minded lingering. This place had been her refuge since the divorce 5 years back, the one steady thing after her ex-husband decided fatherhood was more burden than duty. She was reaching for the light switch when the bell above the door chimed. Emily's hand froze midair as she turned to see a woman stepping inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The stranger was impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray business suit that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect shiny despite the late hour. But it was her eyes that caught Emily's attention. Tired, almost hollow, like someone carrying the weight of the world. "I'm sorry," Emily said, her voice gentle but apologetic. "We're actually closed for the night." The woman stopped just inside the doorway, her hands still on the brass handle. For a moment, she looked like she might turn around and leave, but then her shoulders sagged slightly, and she let out a breath that seemed to carry years of exhaustion. "I know," the woman said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw the sign, but I was driving through and I saw the lights still on and she trailed off, looking around the cozy interior with something that resembled longing. I haven't had a real cup of coffee in weeks. Just airport vending machines and hotel lobbies." Emily studied the woman's face, noting the dark circles under her eyes, and the way her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly. Something in her expression reminded Emily of herself during those first months after the divorce. Lost, exhausted, and desperately in need of human connection. "Well," Emily said, moving back toward the counter, "I suppose I could make one more pot. What would you like?" The relief that washed over the woman's face was immediate and profound. "Just coffee, black, strong," she paused, then added with a self-deprecating smile. "I'm Samantha, by the way. Samantha Blake." "Emily Carter," she replied, already reaching for the premium blend she reserved for special occasions. "Welcome to Maple Street Café. Find a seat anywhere you'd like." Samantha chose a table by the window, setting down a leather briefcase that looked as expensive as her suit. As Emily worked the espresso machine, she couldn't help but steal glances at her unexpected customer. There was something magnetic about Samantha's presence. Even in her obvious exhaustion, she carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to boardrooms and high-stakes decisions. Yet there was a vulnerability in the way she stared out the window at the quiet street. "Beautiful town," Samantha said when Emily approached with a steaming mug. "It is," Emily agreed, setting the coffee down carefully. "Born and raised here. Sometimes I think about leaving," but she gestured around the cafe. "This place has a way of keeping you." Samantha wrapped her hands around the mug, inhaling the rich aroma. "I grew up in a town like this in Ohio. Haven't been back in. God, it must be 8 years now." "Lee, what brings you to Vermont?" Emily asked, then immediately felt presumptuous. "Sorry, I don't mean to pry. It's just rare to see someone in a business suit around here after 9 p.m. a business meeting in Burlington," Samantha replied, taking a sip of the coffee. Her eyes closed briefly, and she let out a small sound of appreciation. "This is incredible. What blend is this?" "It's a custom roast from a supplier in Burlington. Ethiopian beans with a touch of Colombian." Emily found herself sitting down across from Samantha without really meaning to. "I've been perfecting it for 3 years." "You're an artist," Samantha said, and there was genuine admiration in her voice. "I run a tech company, and we go through probably 50 pots of coffee a day, but none of it tastes like this tech company." Emily raised an eyebrow. "That explains the late-night drive." "Let me guess, another acquisition meeting that ran until midnight." Samantha laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Close. Board meeting about quarterly projections. Flew in this morning, meeting all day, flying back to New York tomorrow." She took another sip of coffee. "Sometimes I feel like I live in airports and conference rooms." Emily noticed the way Samantha's voice carried a note of resignation, as if she were describing someone else's life rather than her own. "That sounds exhausting." It is, Samantha admitted, her guard dropping slightly. But it's what I built, what I chose. She paused, staring into her coffee. Though lately, I'm not sure why. The honesty in Samantha's voice surprised them both. Emily felt a familiar tug in her chest. The same feeling she got when a regular customer was having a bad day and needed someone to listen. But this felt different, more personal somehow. Do you have family, kids? Emily asked gently. Samantha's expression shifted, becoming both softer and more pained. A daughter, Lily. She's 7. She pulled out her phone and showed Emily a photo of a beautiful little girl with dark curls and bright eyes. She's with my mother this week while I'm traveling. She's gorgeous, Emily said sincerely. Those eyes. She definitely gets those from you. Thank you. Samantha's smile was genuine for the first time since she'd walked in. What about you? Any kids? 1. My daughter Sophie, she's 8. Emily's face lit up as she talked about her daughter. She's at a sleepover tonight, which is why I'm not rushing home. Usually, she's here after school doing homework at that corner table. A single mom running her own business. Samantha observed. That can't be easy. Some days are harder than others, Emily admitted. But this place, it's not just a business. It's home for me, for Sophie, for half the town. Mrs. Henderson comes in every morning at 7 for her decaf and crossword puzzle. Jake from the hardware store stops by for lunch every Tuesday and Thursday. The high school kids come here to study for exams. She gestured around the cafe. It's not glamorous, but it matters. Samantha listened intently, and Emily noticed how her posture had relaxed, how the tension in her shoulders had eased. It sounds wonderful, like something out of a movie. What about your company? Do you enjoy what you do? Samantha was quiet for a long moment considering the question. I used to when it was just me and 2 guys in a garage trying to change the world with better software. Now it's board meetings and profit margins and decisions that affect hundreds of employees. She sighed. Sometimes I wonder if I've lost sight of why I started in the first place. Maybe you just need to remember what made you fall in love with it originally. Emily suggested. Maybe, Samantha agreed, though she sounded doubtful. Or maybe I need to figure out what I actually want my life to look like. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The only sounds the gentle hum of the refrigerator and the distant rumble of a truck passing on the highway. Emily found herself studying Samantha's profile as she gazed out the window, noting the elegant line of her jaw and the way the cafe's warm lighting softened her features. Can I ask you something? Samantha said suddenly, turning back to Emily. Of course. Do you ever feel lonely? Running this place, raising your daughter alone. The question was so direct, so vulnerable that Emily felt her breath catch. Every day, she answered honestly. But loneliness and being alone aren't the same thing. You know, I'm surrounded by people all day, but sometimes, she trailed off, not sure how to finish the thought. Sometimes you feel like you're performing a role instead of living your life. Samantha finished quietly. Exactly. Emily met her eyes, surprised by how well this stranger understood. How did you know? Because I feel the same, just on a different stage. Yours is a cafe, mine is boardrooms. The charge between them was undeniable now, an understanding that didn't need words. Something loosened and warmed in Emily's chest, unrelated to the cafe's heater. Want a refill? Emily asked, even though Samantha's mug was still half full. Actually, Samantha said, checking her watch, I should get going. Early flight, and I still have to drive back to Burlington. The sharp pang of disappointment surprised Emily with its force. Of course. I'll grab your check. No charge, she added when Samantha reached for her wallet. Call it a welcome to Millbrook. Samantha looked ready to protest, then simply smiled. Thank you, for the coffee and for... She gestured lightly. Listening. Thank you for the company, Emily said. It's quiet after closing. Samantha stood, gathered her briefcase, and paused at the door. Emily, this might sound odd, but... Would it be all right if I stopped by again sometime? If you're ever in the area, I'd like that, Emily said, and meant it more than she expected. After the door closed, Emily lingered in the empty shop, replaying every beat of their conversation. Something significant had passed between them, she couldn't name it, but it felt real. When she finally cut the lights and turned the lock, she caught herself hoping Samantha Blake would find her way back to Millbrook. Outside, Samantha sat in the rental for a long moment, staring at the now dark cafe. For the first time in months, she felt something besides fatigue or pressure, a spark of hope. As she drove through Millbrook's quiet streets toward the highway, she was already wondering when she might have another reason to come to Vermont. 3 weeks later, the afternoon rush was peaking when the door chime sounded. Emily glanced up from the espresso machine, expecting a regular, and froze. Samantha Blake. This time, Samantha wore dark jeans and a cream sweater, hair loose over her shoulders. She looked younger, softer, though a thread of tension still held in her posture. "Hi," she said, almost shy. "Hope you don't mind the surprise." Emily's smile came easily, her heart doing a small, startled flutter. "Not at all. I was hoping you'd come back." She swept a hand toward the bustling room. "Though as you can see, it's a little chaotic just now." It was, the afternoon crowd in full swing. Mrs. Henderson posted at her usual table with the day's crossword. 2 college students were hunched over laptops in the corner, and a group of local business owners were having an animated discussion about the upcoming town festival. The air was filled with the sounds of conversation, clinking cups, and the steady hiss of the espresso machine. "I can wait," Samantha said, finding an empty table near the window. "I'm actually not in a rush for once." Emily served the remaining customers in line, but she found herself stealing glances at Samantha throughout the process. There was something different about her today. She seemed more present, less like she was mentally somewhere else. When the cafe finally quieted down, Emily approached with a fresh cup of the Ethiopian blend. "On the house again?" Samantha asked with a raised eyebrow. "Only if you tell me what brings you back to our little town," Emily replied, sitting down across from her. Samantha wrapped her hands around the warm mug, a gesture Emily was beginning to recognize as a comfort habit. "I had a meeting in Montreal that got cancelled at the last minute. Instead of flying straight back to New York, I decided to take a detour." She paused, meeting Emily's eyes. "I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation, about what you said about remembering why I fell in love with my work in the first place." "And did you remember?" "I'm starting to." Samantha's voice was thoughtful. "I spent the last 3 weeks really looking at what my company does, talking to the engineers and developers instead of just the executives. We're working on software that helps small businesses manage their operations more efficiently. It's not glamorous, but it actually makes a difference in people's lives." Emily leaned forward, interested. "That sounds amazing. Like what you're doing could help places like this cafe." "Exactly." Samantha's eyes lit up with enthusiasm Emily hadn't seen before. "We have a program that could streamline your inventory management, track customer preferences, even help with scheduling and payroll. But somewhere along the way, I got so focused on growth and profit margins that I forgot we were actually helping people." "So, what are you going to do about it?" "I'm not sure yet," Samantha admitted. "But I'm thinking about restructuring how we approach new clients, maybe spending more time in places like this, understanding what small business owners actually need instead of just assuming we know." Emily found herself impressed by Samantha's passion. When she talked about her work this way, it was a far cry from the exhausted executive who had stumbled into her cafe 3 weeks ago. "You know," Emily said, "if you ever want to do a case study or something, I'd be happy to help. I've been running this place for 15 years and I've definitely learned what works and what doesn't." Samantha's face brightened. "Really? You'd be willing to do that?" "Of course. Though I should warn you, my system is pretty old school. I still use a paper ledger for most things." "That's perfect. Actually, it would help us understand how to bridge the gap between traditional methods and digital solutions." They spent the next hour discussing the cafe's operations with Emily explaining her daily routines and the challenges she faced as a small business owner. Samantha listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and taking notes on her phone. Emily was struck by how engaged Samantha became when talking about work that mattered to her, how her whole demeanor changed. "Can I ask you something personal?" Emily said during a lull in their conversation. "Sure. What happened with your daughter's father? If you don't mind me asking." Samantha's expression grew more guarded, but she didn't shut down completely. "We were never married. David was a colleague, brilliant programmer, terrible at relationships. When I told him I was pregnant, he made it clear that he wasn't interested in being a father. He moved to Silicon Valley when Lily was 6 months old." "I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult." "It was," Samantha said quietly. "But in some ways, it was easier than trying to co-parent with someone who didn't want to be there." At least this way, Lily doesn't have to deal with the disappointment of a father who shows up sporadically. Emily nodded, understanding all too well Sophie's father was the opposite problem. He was around, but he was so resentful about the responsibility that it poisoned everything. The divorce was actually a relief. How do you handle it? The guilt, I mean, about not being able to give them a traditional family. The question was so raw, so honest that Emily felt her heart ache for this woman who seemed to carry the weight of the world on her shoulders. Some days better than others, she admitted. But then I look at Sophie and she's this incredible, confident, happy kid. And I think maybe we're doing okay after all. Lily asked me last week why I work so much. Samantha said, her voice barely above a whisper. I told her it was so I could give her a good life. And she said she'd rather have a mom who was home more than a big house. Emily reached across the table and gently touched Samantha's hand. Kids are wise like that. They see what really matters. The contact sent a small shock through both of them, and Emily quickly pulled her hand back, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. Samantha looked equally affected, staring at the spot where Emily's hand had been. I should probably get going, Samantha said, though she made no move to leave. I told my mother I'd pick up Lily by 6. Where are you staying? Emily asked, trying to keep her voice casual. There's a bed and breakfast in Burlington. The Willows, I think it's called. Oh, I know that place. Mrs. Garrett runs it. She comes in here sometimes for our Sunday brunch. Emily hesitated, then took a leap. If you're planning to stay another day, you should bring Lily by. Sophie would love to meet her and we have a kids' menu that's pretty popular. Samantha's face lit up. She would love that. She's been asking about Vermont ever since I told her about this place. You told her about the cafe? I told her about the best cup of coffee I'd had in years. Samantha said, her cheeks flushing slightly. And about the woman who made it. The admission hung between them, loaded with implications neither was quite ready to address. Emily felt her pulse quicken, but before she could respond, the door chimed and a group of teenagers burst in, laughing and talking loudly about their upcoming homecoming dance. The moment was broken, but the connection remained as Samantha gathered her things to leave. She turned back to Emily with a smile that was both shy and determined. Tomorrow, then around lunchtime. I'll be here, Emily said and watched as Samantha walked out into the late afternoon sunshine. After she left, Emily found herself moving through her closing routine with unusual energy. She caught herself humming while she cleaned the espresso machine and realized she was looking forward to tomorrow in a way she hadn't looked forward to anything in a long time. That evening, as she tucked Sophie into bed, her daughter looked up at her with curious eyes. Mom, you seem different today. Happy different. Emily smoothed Sophie's hair back from her forehead. Do I? Yeah, like when you're excited about something. Are we getting a new coffee machine? Emily laughed. No, sweetheart. Just looking forward to tomorrow, I guess. Why? What's happening tomorrow? I'm going to meet a new friend and her daughter who's about your age. Sophie's eyes widened with interest. Really? What's her name? Lily. And I think you two might get along really well. As Emily turned off the light and headed to her own room, she found herself wondering what she was getting into. Samantha lived in New York, ran a major company, and inhabited a world completely different from Emily's quiet life in Millbrook. But there was something about their connection that felt too significant to ignore. Something that made Emily want to take a chance for the first time in years. Meanwhile, in Burlington, Samantha was lying awake in her bed at the Willows, staring at the ceiling and thinking about the warmth of Emily's hand on hers. She'd built her entire adult life around control and predictability. But Emily Carter made her want to throw caution to the wind. Tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The next day dawned crisp and clear with the kind of autumn light that made Millbrook look like a postcard. Emily arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, telling herself it was just to prep for the lunch rush. But she found herself checking her appearance in the bathroom mirror more times than necessary, and changing the playlist twice before settling on something that felt appropriately welcoming, but not too obvious. Sophie had insisted on coming to the cafe after school, claiming she needed to work on a history project. But Emily suspected her daughter's real motivation was curiosity about the mysterious visitors. At 11:30, Sophie was stationed at the corner table with her homework spread out, though she kept glancing toward the door every few minutes. Mom, you're being weird, Sophie announced as Emily rearranged the pastry display for the third time. I'm not being weird. I'm being thorough. You reorganized the sugar packets by color. That's weird. Before Emily could defend her organizational choices, the door chimed and Samantha walked in with a little girl who was unmistakably her daughter. Lily Blake had her mother's dark hair and intelligent eyes. But where Samantha carried herself with corporate confidence, Lily bounced with the irrepressible energy of a 7-year-old exploring a new place. "Wow," Lily said, looking around the cafe with wide eyes. "It smells like Christmas in here." Emily laughed, immediately charmed. "That's the cinnamon rolls. We make them fresh every morning. Can I have one?" Lily asked, then quickly looked to her mother for permission. "After lunch," Samantha said gently, then turned to Emily with a smile that seemed brighter than usual. "Emily, this is Lily. Lily, this is Ms. Emily, the one I told you about." "You're the coffee lady," Lily exclaimed. "Mommy said you make the best coffee in the whole world." "Did she?" "Now." Emily glanced at Samantha, who was blushing slightly. "Well, I don't know about the whole world. But I do my best. And speaking of which, there's someone I'd like you to meet." Emily gestured toward the corner table where Sophie was pretending to read her textbook while obviously eavesdropping. "Sophie, come say hello." Sophie approached with the careful dignity of an 8-year-old trying to make a good impression. "Hi, I'm Sophie." "I'm Lily. Are you in 3rd grade, too?" "3rd grade? I'm in 4th grade?" Sophie said with the superiority that comes with being a whole year older. "Oh." Lily looked momentarily deflated, then brightened. "Do you like horses?" "I love horses." "Do you ride?" "Not yet, but Mommy said maybe when we move to our new house." "Do you ride?" "I take lessons at Miller's farm on Saturdays." "Maybe you could come sometime if you visit again." Emily and Samantha exchanged glances over their daughters' heads, both amused and touched by how quickly the girls had connected. "Why don't you two find a table while I get some menus?" Emily suggested. Samantha chose a table near the window. And Lily immediately pressed her nose to the glass. "Look, Mommy, there's a dog wearing a sweater. That's Mr. Peterson's golden retriever Buddy." Sophie informed her knowledgeably. "He wears sweaters because he gets cold, but really I think Mrs. Peterson just likes to dress him up." The girls giggled and Emily felt a warm glow watching them interact. She brought over menus and took their orders. Grilled cheese and tomato soup for both girls, a turkey sandwich for Samantha, and a salad for herself, though she was too nervous to eat much. So Samantha said once the girls had wandered over to look at the community bulletin board. "This is nice. Really nice. They seem to be hitting it off." Emily observed watching as Sophie pointed out various flyers and announcements to Lily. "Lily doesn't make friends easily," Samantha said quietly. "She's shy around new people, especially kids. But Sophie has a way about her. Sophie's always been social. Sometimes I think she gets that from her father. He could talk to anyone." Emily paused. "The good traits anyway." They watched the girls discover the little bookshelf Emily kept stocked with picture books and puzzles. Lily pulled out a story about a girl who wanted to be an astronaut, and Sophie immediately launched into a recap of the space unit from science class. "Lily wants to be a scientist when she grows up," Samantha said, pride unmistakable. "Last week she announced she'd discover a new planet and name it after our cat." "What's your cat's name?" "Newton. As in Isaac." Emily grinned. "Of course it is. Let me guess, Lily named him." "Actually, that was me," Samantha admitted. "I got him in grad school while I was working on my computer science degree. I thought it was clever." She looked a touch sheepish. "I was very serious about everything back then." "And now?" "Now I'm trying to remember how not to be serious about everything," Samantha said, thoughtful. "Lily helps. Kids are good at putting life in perspective." Emily was about to reply when Sophie's voice spiked with excitement. "Really? You've been to the Museum of Science in Boston? That's so cool. Mom, can we go sometime?" "We'll see, sweetheart," Emily called back, then lowered her voice. "She's been asking for months. I keep meaning to plan it, but running a business doesn't leave much room for weekend trips," Samantha finished. "I know the feeling. I've been promising Lily the Natural History Museum in New York for 6 months." "Maybe we both stop making excuses and actually do it," Emily blurted. Samantha blinked. "You mean together?" Heat rose in Emily's cheeks. "I just meant the girls get along so well. It might be fun for them to have a friend along." But if that's presumptuous, it's not at all, Samantha said quickly. I think it's a great idea. Lily would be thrilled. Before Emily could rethink it, she pressed on. What if we make it a whole weekend? The girls can see the museum, and we could, explore the city. I haven't been to New York in years. You'd really want to do that? I'd love to, Emily said, surprised by how true it felt. Lunch arrived, and soon all four were gathered around the table, the girls chattering about favorite books and whether unicorns could exist if scientists tried hard enough. Unicorns aren't real, Sophie declared with 8-year-old certainty. But narwhals are, and they're basically ocean unicorns. I know about narwhals. Lily said, delighted. Their tusks are actually teeth, and they live in the Arctic. Exactly. Real animals are way cooler than made-up ones. Emily and Samantha listened, trading quick smiles whenever their eyes met. It felt effortless, sharing a meal, the girls bonding over shared curiosities, conversation flowing as if they'd been doing this for years. Ms. Emily, Lily piped up suddenly, do you have any kids' books about coffee? I want to learn how you make it taste so good. I don't think anyone's written a children's book about coffee, Emily laughed. But I could show you how the espresso machine works if your mom says it's okay. Lily turned pleading eyes to Samantha. Can I, Mommy, please? As long as you don't touch anything hot, Samantha agreed. Emily led both girls behind the counter, explaining how the espresso machine worked and letting them help measure coffee beans for grinding. She showed them how to froth milk, letting each girl try their hand at creating foam art. Though their attempts looked more like abstract expressionism than the neat leaf patterns Emily usually made. This is so cool, Lily breathed, watching the milk swirl in the picture. When I grow up, I want to have a coffee shop, too, and a laboratory. Can you have both? You can have whatever you want, Emily said. Seriously. The trick is figuring out how to make them work together. Samantha, watching from the table, felt something shift in her chest. There was Emily patiently teaching their daughters, treating Lily's dreams with the same respect she'd given adults' ambitions. It was such a small thing, but it spoke to something fundamental about who Emily was as a person. When they returned to the table with their foam art creations, 2 cups of steamed milk decorated with wobbly hearts, Lily was practically vibrating with excitement. Mommy, look what I made. Can we get an espresso machine for our apartment? I don't think our kitchen is big enough for an espresso machine, sweetheart. What if we got a bigger kitchen? Samantha laughed. Well, see. As the afternoon wore on, Emily found herself reluctant to see them leave. The cafe had filled with its usual after-school crowd, but somehow Samantha and Lily felt like they belonged there, like they were part of the daily rhythm of the place. We should probably get going, Samantha said eventually, checking her watch. We have a long drive back to Burlington. Do we have to? Lily asked, echoing Emily's own thoughts. Yes, we do, but maybe we can come back and visit again soon. Really? Both girls asked in unison, making the adults laugh. Really? Samantha confirmed, looking directly at Emily. If that's okay with Ms. Emily, more than okay, Emily said. You're welcome here anytime. As they gathered their things to leave, Lily threw her arms around Emily in an impulsive hug. Thank you for teaching me about coffee and for letting me meet Sophie. Emily hugged her back, surprised by the emotion that welled up in her throat. Thank you for visiting my cafe, Lily. I hope I'll see you again very soon. Samantha lingered after Lily had said goodbye to Sophie and headed toward the door. Thank you, she said quietly. For today, for making her feel so welcome. She's been talking about this visit all week. She's a wonderful kid. You should be proud. I am. Samantha paused, seeming to gather her courage. Emily, about that trip to New York. Were you serious? Completely serious? Then let's make it happen soon. After they left, Emily and Sophie cleaned up the cafe together. Sophie chattering about her new friend and all the things they could do together if Lily came back to visit. I like her mom, Sophie said as she helped stack chairs. And I like her mom, too. She's nice and pretty. Emily felt her cheeks warm. She is nice. Are you going to be friends with her? I hope so, sweetheart. I really hope so. That night, as Emily was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. Lily hasn't stopped talking about Sophie in the cafe. She wants to know if she can write Sophie a letter. Also, I meant what I said about New York. Let me know when you're free for a weekend. Samantha. Emily stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Letters are definitely encouraged, and I'm free most weekends. Just let me know what works for you. The response came quickly. Perfect. I'll send you some dates. And Emily, today was exactly what I needed. Thank you. As Emily drifted off to sleep, she found herself imagining weekend trips to New York, letters between the girls, and more afternoons like today. For the first time in years, the future felt full of possibilities. 2 weeks later, Emily found herself standing in Grand Central Terminal with Sophie, both of them craning their necks to take in the soaring ceiling and the rush of people moving in every direction. Sophie clutched Emily's hand tightly, her eyes wide with excitement and a touch of overwhelm. It's so big, Mom, Sophie whispered. And so loud. I know, sweetheart, but look how beautiful it is. They had taken the train down from Vermont that morning, a 3.5-hour journey that had felt both endless and too short. Emily had spent most of the trip alternating between excitement and anxiety, wondering if she was making a mistake by accepting Samantha's invitation for a weekend in New York. But seeing Sophie's face now, full of wonder and anticipation, she knew she'd made the right choice. Emily. Sophie. They turned to see Samantha and Lily approaching through the crowd, both dressed casually in jeans and comfortable walking shoes. Lily broke away from her mother and ran to Sophie, throwing her arms around her new friend. You came? You really came? Wait until you see my room. I have a telescope and we can see the Empire State Building from my window. Really? Sophie's nervousness evaporated in the face of Lily's enthusiasm. Can we look at stars? There aren't many stars in the city, Lily said matter-of-factly. But we can look at buildings and pretend they're constellations. Emily and Samantha exchanged amused glances as the girls chattered excitedly about their weekend plans. How was the train ride? Samantha asked, reaching for Emily's overnight bag. Smooth. Sophie loved it. She spent most of the trip with her face pressed to the window. Emily looked around the terminal, feeling slightly overwhelmed herself. I'd forgotten how intense the city can be. It takes some getting used to, Samantha agreed. But I think you'll like my neighborhood. It's quieter than this. Samantha lived in a converted brownstone on the Upper West Side, a beautiful building with original details and modern updates. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor with large windows that flooded the space with natural light. It was elegantly furnished but comfortable with touches that spoke to both Samantha's success and her role as a mother. Expensive art on the walls alongside Lily's drawings. A state-of-the-art kitchen with a small table covered in homework and craft supplies. This is incredible, Emily said, looking around the living room. The light is amazing. That's why I chose this place, Samantha said, setting down their bags. Lily, why don't you show Sophie your room while I get us some coffee? The girls disappeared down the hallway, their voices echoing with excitement, and Emily found herself alone with Samantha for the first time since that evening in the café. The intimacy of being in Samantha's home, seeing her personal space felt both thrilling and nerve-wracking. I can't believe you actually came, Samantha said, moving toward the kitchen. Part of me was convinced you changed your mind. Part of me was convinced I would, too, Emily admitted following her. But Sophie was so excited and I wanted to see you again. The honesty of her admission hung between them as Samantha prepared coffee using a machine that probably cost more than Emily's monthly grocery budget. But when she handed Emily a cup, the coffee was perfect, rich and smooth, though not quite as good as what Emily made at the café. So Samantha said, leaning against the counter, what would you like to see first? The Natural History Museum is definitely on the agenda, but we have all weekend. Whatever you think the girls would enjoy. This is really about them, isn't it? Samantha studied Emily's face. Is it just about them? Before Emily could answer, the girls came running back into the living room. Lily carrying a small telescope and Sophie clutching a stuffed dinosaur. Mom, look what Lily has. It's a real telescope and she has a whole collection of rocks and minerals. And Sophie knows all about horses, Lily added. She's going to teach me how to braid their manes when we go back to Vermont. When we go back, Emily raised an eyebrow. Lily's already planning her next visit. Samantha explained with a smile. I hope that's okay. More than okay. They spent the afternoon exploring Central Park. The girls running ahead on the paths while Emily and Samantha walked behind them, talking easily about everything and nothing. The autumn foliage was at its peak, painting the park in brilliant reds and golds, and the crisp air carried the sounds of street musicians and children playing. I used to come here every weekend when I first moved to the city, Samantha said as they watched the girls feed ducks at the pond. I was so homesick for open spaces and trees. This was the closest I could get. Do you miss it? The small town where you grew up sometimes, especially when I'm stuck in traffic or dealing with difficult board members. Samantha paused, watching Lily carefully count out pieces of bread for the ducks. But then I think about the opportunities here, the schools, the museums. I want Lily to have access to everything. She seems pretty happy, Emily observed. She is mostly, but sometimes I worry that I'm so focused on giving her opportunities that I'm not giving her enough of myself. Emily understood that guilt intimately. It's the eternal parent dilemma, isn't it? Wanting to provide for them while also being present for them. Exactly. And being a single parent makes it even more complicated. They found a bench overlooking the pond and sat down. The girls still occupied with the ducks. The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the water. Can I ask you something? Emily said, what made you decide to have Lily? I mean, when you found out you were pregnant and her father wasn't interested. Samantha was quiet for a moment, considering the question. Honestly, I was terrified. I was 28, just starting to build my company, and suddenly I was facing single motherhood. But when I thought about not having her, she shook her head. I couldn't imagine my life without her in it, even though I'd never met her yet. That's beautiful. It was also incredibly naive, Samantha said with a laugh. I had no idea how hard it would be. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, trying to build a business while pumping breast milk in conference rooms. But you did it. You built an incredible company and raised an amazing daughter. Some days I feel like I'm barely keeping it together, Samantha admitted, like I'm one crisis away from everything falling apart. Emily turned to face her fully. Samantha, you're one of the most capable people I've ever met. Your daughter adores you. Your company is successful, and you're sitting here in Central Park on a beautiful Saturday afternoon instead of working. That doesn't sound like someone who's falling apart. You think I'm capable? Samantha's voice was soft, almost vulnerable. I think you're extraordinary. The compliment seemed to catch Samantha off guard, and Emily saw something shift in her expression. Surprise, pleasure, and something deeper that made Emily's pulse quicken. Mom, Miss Emily. Lily came running over, Sophie close behind her. Can we go see the carousel, please? Of course, Samantha said, standing up and brushing off her jeans. But after that, we should head back and get ready for dinner. They spent an hour at the carousel. The girls riding painted horses while Emily and Samantha stood at the fence, watching and laughing at their daughter's delight. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Emily felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Back at the apartment, they ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor while the girls built an elaborate fort out of couch cushions and blankets. Emily found herself studying Samantha in this domestic setting. Hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, sauce on her chin from laughing at something Lily said, completely relaxed in a way Emily had never seen her. What? Samantha asked, noticing Emily's gaze. Nothing. You look happy. I am happy, Samantha said and seemed surprised by the realization. I can't remember the last time I spent a whole day without checking my email or thinking about work. How does it feel? Terrifying, Samantha admitted with a laugh. But also liberating. After dinner, they settled in to watch a movie. The girls curled up together in their blanket fort while Emily and Samantha shared the couch. Somewhere during the second act, Emily became aware that Samantha had moved closer, their shoulders touching. Samantha's hand resting on the cushion between them. Emily, Samantha said quietly, not wanting to disturb the girls. Yeah, I'm really glad you came this weekend. Me, too. They finished the movie in comfortable silence, and when it was time to put the girls to bed, they worked together seamlessly. Emily helping Sophie brush her teeth while Samantha got Lily into pajamas, then switching to read bedtime stories. Can Sophie sleep in my room? Lily asked as they tucked her in. If that's okay with Sophie and her mom, Samantha said. Can I, Mom, please? Sophie's eyes were bright with excitement. Of course, sweetheart, but no staying up all night talking. Okay, we promise, both girls said in unison, though Emily suspected they were crossing their fingers behind their backs. After the girls were settled, Emily and Samantha found themselves alone in the living room, the apartment quiet except for the distant sounds of the city outside. Emily felt suddenly nervous, aware that they were alone together in a way they'd never been before. "Would you like some wine?" Samantha asked. "I have a bottle of Pinot Noir that's supposed to be excellent." "That sounds perfect." Samantha opened the wine and poured 2 glasses, then joined Emily on the couch. They sat facing each other, legs tucked under them, the space between them charged with possibility. "So," Samantha said, taking a sip of wine. "Tomorrow, we tackle the Natural History Museum. The girls are going to love it. Sophie's been reading about dinosaurs all week in preparation. And Lily's been practicing her facts about gemstones. She wants to impress Sophie with her knowledge of the mineral collection." They talked about their plans for the next day, but Emily could sense an undercurrent of tension, as if they were both aware that they were dancing around something more significant. "Emily," Samantha said finally, setting down her wine glass. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course. I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in a very long time. Maybe ever." Samantha's voice was quiet. "Careful. And I know this is complicated. We live in different states. We have completely different lives. But I can't stop thinking about you." Emily's heart began to race. "Samantha, I know it's crazy. I know there are a million reasons why this doesn't make sense, but when I'm with you, I feel like myself again. Not the CEO, not the single mother trying to hold everything together, just me." Emily set down her own wine glass and reached for Samantha's hand. "It's not crazy. I feel the same way." "You do?" "I do. And you're right. It is complicated. But maybe—" Emily took a breath, gathering her courage. "Maybe complicated doesn't have to mean impossible." Samantha's eyes searched Emily's face. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I haven't felt this connected to someone in years. I'm saying that watching you with Lily today, seeing you away from work, and just being a mom and a person made me realize how much I want to know all the different sides of you." Emily paused, her heart pounding. "I'm saying that maybe we should see where this goes." The relief on Samantha's face was immediate and profound. "Really? Really?" Samantha leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and Emily met her halfway. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, a question being asked and answered. When they broke apart, both were breathing a little unsteadily. "Wow," Samantha whispered. "Yeah," Emily agreed. "Wow." They spent the rest of the evening talking quietly, sharing stories about their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Emily learned that Samantha had wanted to be an astronaut when she was Lily's age, that she still sometimes dreamed about space travel. Samantha learned that Emily had once considered culinary school, but chose the cafe instead because she wanted to stay close to home. "Do you ever regret it?" Samantha asked. "Not pursuing culinary school?" "Sometimes. But then I think about all the people who've found comfort in my cafe over the years. All the conversations and connections that have happened there. And I think maybe I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be." "I think you did too," Samantha said softly. When they finally said goodnight, Emily felt like she was floating. As she settled into the guest room, she could hear the girls whispering and giggling in Lily's room, and she smiled, thinking about how much their lives had changed in just a few short weeks. In her own room, Samantha lay awake for a long time, replaying the evening and thinking about the future. For the first time in years, she was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with quarterly reports or board meetings. She was looking forward to seeing where this unexpected connection with Emily Carter might lead. Emily woke to the sound of muffled giggles and the smell of coffee brewing. Sunlight streamed through the guest room windows, and for a moment, she forgot where she was. Then last night rushed back, the kiss, the conversation, the warm spark of possibility settling in her chest. She drifted to the kitchen where Samantha stood at the stove flipping pancakes, the girls at the small table in pajamas, sketching on napkins. "Morning," Samantha said, turning with a shy, luminous smile. "Hope you slept well." "Like a rock," Emily replied, though it wasn't quite true. She'd spent half the night replaying that kiss and wondering what it meant. "Something smells incredible. Blueberry pancakes. Lily's favorite, and I figured Sophie might approve." "I love blueberry pancakes," Sophie declared. "Mom makes them sometimes, but hers aren't this fluffy." "Hey," Emily protested, mock-wounded. "My pancakes are perfectly adequate." "Adequate?" Samantha echoed, grinning. Glowing praise. Emily reached for coffee, and as she slipped behind Samantha, a free hand brushed hers, just a fleeting touch, but it sent warmth racing through her. Look what we drew, Lily said, holding up a napkin covered with a brightly colored dinosaur in a tutu. It's a ballerina T-Rex, she announced. And I made a horse with wings, Sophie added, revealing her masterpiece. Lily says it's a Pegasus. Excellent work, both of you, Emily said, settling at the table with her mug. Excited for the museum? So excited, Lily bounced. I want the planetarium, and the dinosaurs, and the gems, and the whale. The whale? Sophie blinked. There's a huge blue whale hanging from the ceiling, Samantha explained, flipping with easy rhythm. One of Lily's favorites. Can we see everything? Sophie asked. We can try, Emily said. But it's a big place. We might need to choose favorites. Or, Samantha said, setting down a plate of golden pancakes, we make this the first of many trips. The casual suggestion of future trips together made Emily's heart skip. But before she could respond, the girls had launched into an animated discussion of museum priorities that involved dinosaurs, space shows, and something called the earthquake room. After breakfast, they all got dressed and headed out into the crisp October morning. The Natural History Museum was only a few blocks away, and as they walked, Emily found herself marveling at how natural this felt. The four of them moving through the city together. Samantha pointing out landmarks while the girls skipped ahead, occasionally stopping to examine interesting things in shop windows. You know, Samantha said quietly as they approached the museum's iconic facade. I've lived here for 8 years, and I've probably only been to this museum 3 times. It's funny how you take things for granted when they're always available. I do the same thing with Vermont, Emily admitted. Sophie's been asking to go apple picking for weeks, and I keep saying we'll do it next weekend, but there's always something at the cafe that needs attention. Maybe when we visit again, we can go apple picking, Samantha suggested. You want to visit again? Samantha stopped walking and turned to face Emily, her expression serious. Emily, last night wasn't just a moment for me. I meant what I said about wanting to see where this goes. Even though it's complicated, especially because it's complicated. The best things usually are. They were interrupted by Lily tugging on Samantha's jacket. Mommy, can we go in now? There's a line forming. The museum was everything Emily had hoped it would be and more. The girls were enchanted by the towering dinosaur skeletons. Spent nearly an hour in the gem and mineral hall, examining every display case. And were appropriately awed by the massive blue whale suspended above the Hall of Ocean Life. It's so big, Sophie whispered, craning her neck to look up at the whale. How did they get it up there? Very carefully, Samantha said with a smile. In the planetarium, they lay back in reclining seats and watched a show about the solar system. Emily found herself less focused on the stars projected overhead than on Samantha beside her, the way the dim light played across her profile, the soft sound of her breathing. When Samantha's hand found hers in the darkness, Emily felt like her own personal constellation had just aligned. This is the best day ever, Lily announced as they emerged from the planetarium into the bright museum corridors. It really is, Sophie agreed. Can we come back tomorrow? We have to go home tomorrow, sweetheart, Emily reminded her. But we'll come back another time, Samantha said quickly. Promise? Both girls asked in unison. Promise? Samantha and Emily said together, then looked at each other and laughed. They spent the rest of the afternoon exploring, ending up in the museum shop where the girls carefully selected souvenirs with their allowance money. A small dinosaur figurine for Sophie and a geode for Lily. As they walked back to the apartment, both girls chattering excitedly about everything they'd seen. Emily felt a bittersweet tug knowing their weekend was almost over. What would you like to do for dinner? Samantha asked as they climbed the stairs to her apartment. We could order in, or there's a great family restaurant a few blocks away. Can we cook together? Lily asked. Like a real family? The innocent comment hung in the air and Emily saw Samantha's cheeks flush slightly. I mean, if everyone wants to cook, I'd love to cook together, Emily said quickly. What do you have in mind? They ended up making homemade pizza. The girls helping to roll out dough while Emily and Samantha prepared toppings. The kitchen was filled with laughter and the occasional flour fight, and Emily couldn't remember the last time cooking had felt so joyful. You're really good at this, Samantha said as Emily showed Lily how to spread sauce evenly across the dough. Years of practice. Sophie and I cook together a lot. It's one of our favorite things to do. I usually just order takeout, Samantha admitted. I'm not much of a cook. You made perfect pancakes this morning. That's about the extent of my skills. Pancakes and scrambled eggs. Well, you'll have to come to Vermont and let me teach you some of my specialties, Emily said, then realized how presumptuous that sounded. I mean, if you want to. I'd love that, Samantha said softly. After dinner, they settled in for another movie, but this time the girls fell asleep halfway through, curled up together in their blanket fort. Emily and Samantha carefully moved them to Lily's room, working together to tuck them in without waking them. They're going to miss each other, Samantha whispered as they stood in the doorway, watching the girls sleep. They'll stay in touch. Kids are good at that. What about us? Samantha asked quietly. How do we stay in touch? Emily turned to face her in the dim hallway. However we want to. Phone calls, texts, visits. I have a confession, Samantha said. I've been thinking about this all day and I have an idea, but it might sound crazy. Tell me. What if I opened a satellite office in Vermont? Not in Millbrook necessarily, but somewhere nearby. Burlington maybe. I've been wanting to expand our small business consulting anyway, and Vermont has a lot of entrepreneurs who could use our services. Emily stared at her. You'd really consider that? I've been thinking about it for weeks, actually, even before this weekend. The company is stable enough now that I don't need to be in New York every day. And Lily would love living somewhere with more space. Maybe even getting that horse she's always talking about. Samantha, that's a huge decision. You can't make it just because of me. I'm not making it just because of you, Samantha said, stepping closer. I'm making it because for the first time in years, I can imagine a different kind of life. One where I'm not constantly stressed. Where Lily can run around outside without me worrying about traffic. Where I can have coffee with someone who makes me laugh every day. Emily felt her heart racing. Every day if you'll have me. Instead of answering with words, Emily kissed her deeper this time with more certainty. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Is that a yes? Samantha whispered. That's a yes to whatever you want it to be a yes to, Emily said, making Samantha laugh. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch talking about possibilities and practicalities. Samantha explained how she could restructure her company to allow for remote work, how she'd been feeling increasingly disconnected from the corporate world. Anyway, Emily talked about her dreams for expanding the cafe, maybe adding a small bookstore, or hosting community events. You know what's funny? Emily said as they were getting ready for bed. 3 weeks ago I thought my life was perfectly fine the way it was. Predictable, safe, manageable. And now I can't imagine going back to that. You've changed everything. Samantha. You've changed everything for me too. Samantha said in the best possible way. That night Emily lay in the guest room thinking about the future for the first time in years. Not just the immediate future of getting through the next day or the next week, but the long-term future. A future that might include Samantha and Lily, family dinners, and weekend adventures. Someone to share both the mundane moments and the extraordinary ones. In her own room, Samantha was making mental lists, schools to research in Vermont, real estate websites to browse, conversations she'd need to have with her business partners. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely unlike any decision she'd ever made. But as she thought about Emily's smile and Lily's laughter echoing through the cafe, she knew she was ready to take the leap. The train ride back to Vermont was bittersweet. Sophie and Lily had tearfully promised to write letters and convince their mothers to exchange phone numbers so they could video chat. As the New York skyline disappeared behind them and the landscape shifted to rolling hills and autumn foliage, Emily found herself caught between sadness at leaving and excitement about what lay ahead. Mom, Sophie said, looking up from the book Lily had given her. Are we going to see them again soon? I hope so, sweetheart. Lily said her mom might move to Vermont. Is that true? Emily felt her cheeks warm. It's something we talked about, but it's complicated. Samantha has a big job in New York, but she could do her job from Vermont, right, with computers and stuff. Maybe. We'll have to see what happens. Sophie seemed satisfied with this answer and returned to her book. But Emily spent the rest of the journey thinking about the conversation she'd need to have with her daughter if Samantha did decide to move. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you're falling in love with someone you've known for less than a month? Back in Millbrook, life resumed its familiar rhythm, but everything felt different. Emily found herself checking her phone constantly for messages from Samantha. smiling at photos of Lily's latest science experiments or updates about Samantha's meetings with her business partners about the Vermont expansion. 3 days after their return, Emily was closing the cafe when her phone rang. "How would you feel about a visitor this weekend?" Samantha's voice was warm but tired. "I'd love a visitor, both of you." "Just me actually. Lily's spending the weekend with my mother. They're going to the zoo and some Broadway show. I thought maybe we could have some time to talk about the future, about what this all means." Emily's heart skipped. "That sounds perfect. But Samantha, are you okay? You sound stressed." "I am stressed. I had a meeting with my board today about the Vermont expansion, and it didn't go as smoothly as I'd hoped. Some of them think I'm making an emotional decision rather than a business one." "Are you?" There was a pause. "Maybe. Probably. But that doesn't mean it's the wrong decision. Come to Vermont," Emily said firmly. "We'll figure it out together." Samantha arrived Friday evening, driving up in a rental car with dark circles under her eyes and tension in her shoulders that Emily could see from across the cafe's parking lot. Emily had stayed open late specifically so Samantha could have her usual table by the window and a cup of the Ethiopian blend that had started everything. "Rough week?" Emily asked, setting down the coffee and studying Samantha's face. "You could say that." Samantha wrapped her hands around the mug in the gesture Emily had come to love. "I've been in meetings for 3 days straight trying to convince my board that opening a Vermont office makes financial sense." "And does it?" "On paper, barely. We'd be taking a risk, investing in a market we don't fully understand yet." Samantha took a sip of coffee and closed her eyes briefly. "But I know it could work. I know there's a need for what we do up here." Emily sat down across from her. "What did they say?" "They gave me 6 months to put together a comprehensive business plan. Market research, financial projections, staffing plans, the whole thing. If I can prove it's viable, they'll approve the expansion." "That's good news, isn't it?" "It is. But it also means 6 months of uncertainty. 6 months of not knowing if this is actually going to happen." Samantha looked directly at Emily. 6 months of not knowing if we're building something real or just dreaming." Emily reached across the table and took Samantha's hand. "Hey, look at me." When Samantha met her eyes, Emily continued, "What we have is real. Regardless of where you live. Yes, it would be easier if you were here, but we'll figure it out either way." "You really believe that?" "I really believe that. Besides," Emily smiled, 6 months gives us time to be sure about this, to make sure we're not just caught up in the excitement of something new." Samantha squeezed Emily's hand. "I'm already sure." "So am I. But there's no harm in taking our time doing this, right?" They spent the evening walking through downtown Millbrook. Emily pointing out local businesses and introducing Samantha to the handful of people they encountered. At Miller's farm, where Sophie took riding lessons, they met Tom Miller, who immediately launched into a discussion about the challenges of running a small agricultural business. "You know," Tom said to Samantha after learning about her company, "we could use help with our booking system. Right now, it's all paper calendars and phone calls. Gets pretty chaotic during busy season." "That's exactly the kind of problem we solve," Samantha said, her professional interest clearly piqued. "Would you mind if I came back sometime to learn more about your operations?" "Anytime. Always happy to talk to someone who might be able to help us work smarter instead of harder." As they walked back toward Emily's house, Samantha was quiet, clearly processing the conversation. "What are you thinking about?" Emily asked. "Tom's farm, the bookstore we passed that was struggling with inventory management, the restaurant that mentioned they needed help with scheduling." Samantha stopped walking and turned to Emily. "There really is a market here, isn't there?" "I told you there was." "I know, but seeing it firsthand. Talking to actual business owners about their actual problems, it makes it real." Emily lived in a small house just outside downtown, a cozy 2-bedroom cottage with a garden that was currently dormant for winter, but showed signs of careful tending. Sophie was spending the night at a friend's house, giving Emily and Samantha the rare luxury of uninterrupted time together. "This is lovely," Samantha said, looking around the living room with its comfortable furniture and walls covered with Sophie's artwork and photos of their life together. "It's not much, but it's home." "It feels like home," Samantha said softly, "warm and lived in and peaceful." They made dinner together. Emily teaching Samantha how to make her grandmother's pasta sauce while Samantha told stories about Lily's latest obsession with marine biology. The domesticity of it felt natural, as if they'd been doing this for years rather than navigating their second weekend together. "Can I ask you something?" Samantha said as they cleaned up after dinner. "Anything. What do you want? I mean, if I move here, if we really do this, what does your ideal future look like?" Emily waited, then answered honestly. "What we had this weekend in New York. Family dinners. Shared adventures. Someone to debrief with at the end of the day. I want Sophie to have a positive female role model who isn't just me. I want to wake up next to someone who makes me laugh." She shrugged lightly. "That's all." "That's everything," Samantha said, stepping closer and brushing her fingertips along Emily's cheek. "And I want it, too. I want Lily to grow up like I did, room to run, neighbors who know her name. I want to build something meaningful, not just profitable. And I want to fall asleep next to you every night." When they kissed this time, it carried weight, real commitment, a promise of a future they were both ready to work for. "Stay tonight," Emily whispered when they parted. "Not in the guest room. With me." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." They spent the night talking and holding each other, childhood stories, private fears, dreams for their daughters. Emily woke to sunlight spilling across her bedroom and Samantha's arm looped around her, a contentment settling in her bones like nothing she'd felt before. "Morning," Samantha murmured, kissing Emily's shoulder. "A very good morning," Emily smiled, turning to face her. They opened the cafe together, Samantha insisting on helping with prep and winning over the dawn crowd with her easy curiosity. Mrs. Henderson, guardian of the daily crossword, promptly adopted her and spent 20 minutes outlining the subtleties of small-town politics. "She likes you," Emily said once Mrs. Henderson left. "Not an easy feat. I like her, too. I like all of this." Samantha swept a hand around the cafe. "I can see why you love it here." "Can you see yourself loving it here?" "I can see myself loving anywhere you are," Samantha said, then laughed at her own sappiness. "But yes, I can definitely see myself loving it here." That afternoon, they picked up Sophie from her sleepover and headed to Miller's farm. Sophie gave Samantha her first writing lesson while Lily joined by video from her grandmother's apartment in New York, doling out encouragement and tips. "You're a natural," Sophie declared as Samantha guided the gentle mare around the ring. "I don't feel like one," Samantha admitted, grinning. "It's terrifying and amazing at the same time." "That's how all the best things feel," Emily said, and the look Samantha gave her said she knew they weren't just talking about horses anymore. Sunday evening arrived too soon. As Samantha gathered her things to drive back to Burlington for her flight, none of them wanted to say goodbye. "When will we see you again?" Sophie asked, hugging Samantha tightly. "Soon," Samantha promised. "I have a lot of work to do over the next few months, but I'll visit as often as I can. And we'll come to New York again," Emily added. "Maybe for Thanksgiving if that works for you and Lily." "That would be perfect," Samantha said, her eyes bright with unshed tears. After Samantha left, Emily and Sophie sat on their front porch, watching the stars emerge in the clear Vermont sky. "Mom," Sophie said quietly. "Yeah, sweetheart. I really hope Samantha moves here. I think you're happier when she's around." Emily pulled her daughter closer. "I think I am, too. And I really like Lily. It would be nice to have a sister." Emily's heart skipped. "A sister?" "Well, not a real sister. Kind of like a sister. If you and Samantha, you know." Emily marveled at her daughter's perceptiveness. "How would you feel about that if Samantha and I, you know?" Sophie was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think it would be really nice. You've been sad for a long time, Mom." "Not all the time, but underneath. And when Samantha's here, you're not sad underneath anymore." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "You're pretty wise for an 8-year-old. "I get it from you," Sophie said matter-of-factly, making Emily laugh. That night, as Emily was getting ready for bed, her phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. "Made it home safely. Lily wants to know if Sophie would like to be pen pals while we figure out video calling. Also, I love you. I know it's soon to say that, but I couldn't get on the plane without telling you." Emily stared at the message for a long moment, her heart racing. Then she typed back, "I love you, too. And yes, Sophie would love to be pen pals with Lily. We're going to make this work, Samantha. All of it." The response came quickly. "Yes, we are." 6 months is going to fly by. As Emily drifted off to sleep, she found herself already planning Samantha's next visit, already imagining the life they might build together. For the first time in years, the future felt bright with possibility. 5 months later, Emily was arranging fresh flowers in the cafe when she heard the familiar chime of the door, followed by an excited squeal that could only belong to one person. "Miss Emily, we're back." Lily Blake burst through the door like a small hurricane, her dark curls flying as she ran straight into Emily's arms. Behind her, Samantha followed with a smile that was equal parts exhaustion and pure joy, pulling a large suitcase and looking like someone who had just made the biggest decision of her life. "You're early," Emily said, hugging Lily tightly before looking up at Samantha with questioning eyes. "The board meeting ended sooner than expected," Samantha said, setting down her suitcase and moving toward Emily. "And we couldn't wait another day to get here." "And?" Emily asked, though Samantha's expression already told her everything she needed to know. "They approved it. All of it. The Vermont office, the expansion plan, everything." Samantha's voice was filled with wonder, as if she still couldn't quite believe it. "We're moving to Vermont, Emily." For real this time, Emily felt her knees go weak with relief and joy. The past 5 months had been a whirlwind of business plans and market research, weekend visits and long phone calls, the constant uncertainty of not knowing if their dreams would become reality. But now, looking at Samantha's radiant face and Lily's excited bouncing, it was finally real. "Where's Sophie?" Lily asked, looking around the cafe. "I have so much to tell her." "She's at school, sweetheart, but she'll be here in about an hour. She's going to be so excited to see you. Can we surprise her?" Lily's eyes lit up with mischief. "I think that's a perfect idea," Emily said. Then turned to Samantha. "How long can you stay this time?" "Forever," Samantha said simply. "I mean, I need to go back to New York next week to finalize some things and pack up the apartment, but Lily and I are officially moving here. I found us a house." "You found a house when?" "Yesterday. It's the Blue Victorian on Maple Street about 6 blocks from here. 4 bedrooms, a big backyard, and the most amazing kitchen I've ever seen." Samantha's words tumbled out in a rush. "I know I should have talked to you first, but when the realtor called and said it was available, I had to see it. And the moment I walked in, I could picture us there, all of us." Emily felt tears prick her eyes. "All of us, if you want that. I know we haven't talked about living together yet, but Emily, I can't imagine doing this any other way. These past 5 months of back and forth of missing you every day. I don't want to live like that anymore." Before Emily could respond, the cafe door chimed again, and Mrs. Henderson walked in for her usual afternoon coffee and crossword puzzle. She took one look at the scene. Emily with tears in her eyes, Samantha with her suitcase, Lily practically vibrating with excitement, and smiled knowingly. "Well, well," Mrs. Henderson said, settling at her usual table. "Looks like our Samantha finally made it official." "Mrs. Henderson, this is Lily," Emily said, wiping her eyes and trying to compose herself. "Samantha's daughter, the famous Lily." Mrs. Henderson's face lit up. "I've heard so much about you, dear. Your mother talks about you constantly when she visits." "She does?" Lily looked pleased and slightly embarrassed. "Oh, yes, and I have it on good authority that there's a certain 8-year-old who's been counting down the days until you moved here." As if summoned by the mention of her name, Sophie burst through the cafe door, having spotted Samantha's rental car in the parking lot. "Lily, you're here. Are you visiting or?" "Wait, why do you have so much stuff?" "We're moving here," Lily announced, launching herself at Sophie for a hug. "For real this time. My mom bought us a house and everything." Sophie's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, joy, and then something that looked almost like relief. "Really? You're really staying? Really? Really?" Lily confirmed. Emily watched the girls embrace and felt her heart swell with happiness. Over the past 5 months, Sophie and Lily had maintained their friendship through letters, video calls, and the occasional weekend visit. But Emily had worried about how Sophie would handle the uncertainty of not knowing if Lily would actually move to Vermont. Now, seeing her daughter's pure joy, she realized Sophie had been carrying that worry, too. "Mom," Sophie said, turning to Emily with shining eyes. "Does this mean what I think it means?" Emily looked at Samantha, who nodded encouragingly. "It means that Samantha and Lily are going to be living here in Millbrook. And if you're okay with it, we're all going to be living together like a family." "Like a real family?" Sophie asked, her voice small and hopeful. "Like a real family?" Samantha confirmed, kneeling down to Sophie's level. If that's something you'd want. Sophie looked between Emily and Samantha, then at Lily, who was holding her breath, waiting for the answer. I've wanted that since the first day you came to the cafe, Sophie said simply. The next few hours passed in a blur of excitement and planning. Emily closed the cafe early so they could all go see the house Samantha had bought, and even Emily had to admit it was perfect. The blue Victorian was everything Samantha had described and more. Spacious but cozy with original hardwood floors and modern updates. A wraparound porch and a backyard big enough for the garden Emily had always dreamed of expanding. The girls could each have their own room, Samantha said as they toured the upstairs. But there's also a big bonus room that could be a shared playroom or study space. Can we share a room instead? Lily asked. At least sometimes, like for sleepovers every night. We can figure all of that out, Emily said, laughing at the girls' enthusiasm. That evening, they had dinner at Emily's house, their last meal in the small cottage that had been home for so many years. As they sat around Emily's kitchen table, the girls chattering about school and friends and all the things they wanted to do now that they'd be living in the same town, Emily felt a profound sense of completion. Penny for your thoughts, Samantha said quietly, reaching for Emily's hand across the table. I'm just happy, Emily said. Really, truly happy. I didn't realize how much I'd been holding my breath these past 5 months. Me, too. There were moments when I thought the board would never approve the expansion. When I wondered if I was crazy for appending our entire lives for what? For love, Samantha said simply. For the chance to build something real with you. After dinner, they put the girls to bed in Sophie's room. Both of them insisting they were too excited to sleep. But falling asleep within minutes of their heads hitting the pillows. Emily and Samantha sat on the front porch, wrapped in a blanket, and watching the stars emerge in the clear Vermont sky. I have something for you, Samantha said, reaching into her jacket pocket and pulling out a small wrapped box. Samantha, you didn't need to. Just open it. Inside the box was a key, old-fashioned brass, the kind that might open a Victorian house. Attached to it was a small tag that read home. It's the key to our house, Samantha said. I know we haven't officially talked about marriage or anything like that, but Emily, I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up next to you every morning and fall asleep next to you every night. I want to raise our girls together and grow old together. And Emily silenced her with a kiss, deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, both were crying. Yes, Emily whispered. Yes to all of it. Really? Really? I love you, Samantha Blake. I love your ambition and your kindness and the way you make Lily laugh. I love how you've embraced this town and how you've made Sophie feel like she matters. I love the future we're going to build together. I love you too, Emily Carter, more than I ever thought possible. They spent the rest of the evening making plans. When Samantha would go back to New York to pack, when they'd officially move into the Victorian house, how they'd blend their families and their lives. But underneath all the practical details was a current of pure joy. The knowledge that they'd found something rare and precious and worth fighting for. You know what's funny? Emily said as they were getting ready for bed. What? That night you first came into the cafe. I almost didn't let you stay. I was tired, ready to go home. And you were this stranger asking for coffee after closing time. What changed your mind? Emily thought about it. You looked like you needed it. Not just the coffee, but connection. Someone to see you. I did need it. I needed you, even though I didn't know it yet. Samantha pulled Emily closer. Best cup of coffee I ever had. Even though you've had hundreds of cups since then, especially because I've had hundreds of cups since then. Every single one reminds me of that first night of the moment my life changed completely. 6 weeks later, on a crisp December morning, Emily stood in the kitchen of the blue Victorian house, making coffee in the machine Samantha had bought as a housewarming gift for herself. Through the window, she could see Samantha and the girls building a snowman in the backyard. Their laughter carrying on the cold air. The house was still full of boxes, their two lives slowly merging into one shared space. But it already felt like home. Sophie and Lily had decided to share the biggest bedroom, turning it into their own private kingdom, complete with bunk beds and a reading nook. Emily's books were mixed with Samantha's on the living room shelves. The refrigerator was covered with both girls' artwork and Samantha's business plans for the Vermont office. Mom, Sophie called from the backyard. Come see our snowman. Samantha showed us how to make him look like he's wearing a business suit. Emily grabbed her coat and headed outside, carrying a thermos of hot coffee to share. The snowman was indeed wearing what appeared to be a tie made of twigs and had pine cones arranged to look like buttons on a jacket. "He's very professional," Emily said solemnly, handing Samantha the thermos. "We thought he could be the official greeter for Blake and Associates Vermont," Samantha said with a grin. "What do you think?" "I think he's perfect, just like everything else." Samantha's new office was set to open after the new year, and she'd already signed 3 local businesses as clients, including Tom Miller's farm and the bookstore downtown. The transition hadn't been without challenges. There were still late-night calls with the New York office. Still moments when Samantha questioned whether she'd made the right choice. But every morning when she woke up next to Emily, every afternoon when she picked up both girls from school, every evening when they all sat down to dinner together, she knew she was exactly where she belonged. "Group hug," Lily announced, throwing her arms around Emily and Samantha. Sophie immediately joined in, and they stood there in the snow, the 4 of them holding each other tight. "I have an announcement," Sophie said when they finally broke apart. "What's that, sweetheart?" Emily asked. "I've decided that this is the best family ever, even though we're not a traditional family," Samantha asked gently. "Especially because we're not traditional," Sophie said with the wisdom of a 9-year-old who had learned that love comes in many forms. "We're better than traditional. We're chosen." "Chosen family," Lily repeated, trying out the phrase. "I like that." "Me, too," Emily said, looking around at these 3 people who had transformed her quiet, predictable life into something extraordinary. "Me 3, Samantha added, pulling them all close again. As they headed back in for hot chocolate and mapped out their Christmas decorating game plan, Emily's thoughts drifted to that night 8 months earlier, when a worn-out stranger had stepped into her cafe and asked for one last cup. She couldn't have known that saying yes would lead here, to love, to family, to a future brighter than anything she'd pictured. Sometimes the best parts of life arrive from the least expected directions. Sometimes all it takes is keeping the lights on a few minutes past closing and pouring one more coffee for someone who needs it. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, that someone turns out to be exactly what you were missing, too.